There we go.
Yeah,
well, good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
God is good, isn't He? And she. Amen.
All the time.
So glad to see all of you. I hope you had a lot of food, good food. Don't fall asleep. We still have a lot to go to get through this afternoon, but today and this afternoon, we have the pleasure of having with us Bishop Audrey Scanlan. And Bishop Kevin. I mean, yay! You're my boss.
Thank you, Sandy.
But no, it's so good to have you both with us for this part of Gather of our afternoon. We're going to be hearing more about lay leadership in the church, in the Episcopal Church, and at the diocesan level, and maybe in our world right now and the future from our bishops, which is quite exciting, I think. But before we begin, I thought it would be nice if they can tell us a fun fact about themselves. What do you think? But very briefly, because we are on a schedule, okay? So, yeah. So, who wants to start? A fun fact.
All right. My very first baseball game that I went to, because this is a baseball venue, involved the Chicago Cubs.
That's.
And it might have been around 1970, 1971. It's the best I can figure out, because what I remember was that Ernie Banks, does anybody know the name Ernie Banks? One of the greatest baseball players ever, played in the Negro League, hit a home run. Yeah, Ernie Banks. And the pitcher that day was Ferguson Jenkins. Anybody remember the name Ferguson Jenkins? One of the greatest pitchers of all time as well. And who was playing shortstop, second base? Do we have any Chicago fans here?
Christopher.
Very good. Don Kissinger, what was he playing? Ron Santo was at third. The outfield was Billy Williams, Joe Pepitone, and somebody else I don't remember. But I remember that day.
How old were you?
I remember it. I was, 71, I was probably 4. No, just kidding. I was about 10 or 11. I'm about 11 years old. But I remember every detail of that day. Baseball is magical.
I think you can do better than that. Just kidding.
Baseball stories. Wow.
How?
Every Friday I do a video series, and every first Friday of the month I invite Kevin to come on as a guest. And so I thought I'd use a little of your magic, Sandy. So yesterday, we taped it on Thursday. I pulled out the tell me a fun fact thing. And so I kind of used up my best fun fact on that. And you had a really sad fun fact about how you were kicked out of 4th grade choir.
But funny to us.
5th grade chorus, to be exact. Yes.
It was good. So my fun fact for today, I'm looking around the audience here and trying to figure out if this will have any relevance to you. How many of you have heard of a band called Green Day? Okay, cool. So you'll get this. So there have been probably half a dozen occasions in which I have partied with Green Day because a really good friend of mine in Connecticut, her son, was the bass tech for the bass player of Green Day. And so every time Green Day would come to town, when we lived in Hartford, which was about 6 or 7 times when I was there, we would get backstage passes. And we would go back and we would have dinner with them and we would go on their bus.
Okay, then
and
stop now.
have drinks with them.
See? That's a better fun fact.
There was this one time when you know, they travel with like 4 coach buses just full of equipment and people, and it's an amazing production that they put on. And there was one time when we were outside near one of the trailers, and one of the roadies came up to me, and it was one of these pastoral moments. Now, I wasn't wearing a collar, obviously, but he knew that I was a priest, and he wanted to have kind of a quiet moment with me, talking about life on the road and how much he missed his family, and it was pretty incredible. So,
See?
fun fact. Not about baseball.
Well, thank you both. In talking about those of us that don't wear collars, right, but still have a calling to be leaders in our church, and I think I'm one of those that think that lay leadership is the best. I'm biased, but Bishop Audrey, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. You have been thinking and speaking about the importance of the ministry of the lay order to the Episcopal Church. So could you please get us started by outlining your perspective about this importance, lay leadership in the church?
Lay leadership in the church. So I think somebody earlier today in this room talked about our catechism in the back of the prayer book that says that the ministers of the church are lay people, and then bishops, priests, and deacons. And so it is, I think that says so much. That's a critical message for us. When I worked in the Diocese of Connecticut, I was on the bishop's staff, and during that time, we moved our offices from an old mansion in Hartford to an old factory building that had been repurposed. And when we moved, nobody had their own office anymore. We had, open seating. And the bishops sort of had open seating. They were over in a corner. But we moved all our stuff. And when we moved in, I looked at Bishop Douglas and I said, where are all your certificates? Bishops have all these fancy framed things in our offices of our ordinations and our graduations and all that jazz. And Ian took me over to a little corner in his part of the office, and he said, this is the most important certificate I have. And he had his framed baptismal certificate, which I thought was so cool. What a statement to make, that the gateway to ministry, friends, is when we are first baptized and brought into the body of Christ. One of my least favorite phrases in our church is when we go around in meetings and introduce ourselves to each other, and we say, well, I'm just a lay person. That hurts me when I hear people say that, when well, I'm Bishop Kevin, well, I'm priest so-and-so, well, I'm just a lay person. No, the lay people in our church are so important. In our diocese, we're working to equip lay people, and I think I'll say more about that in a while, but through our Stevenson School, we've identified lay ministries, some of the licensed lay ministries that are so important: lay preacher, lay worship leader, lay pastoral leader. Of course, there's also lay evangelist and lay catechist. But for those first 3, we've developed coursework that you can take to be trained in these roles, so that when we ask lay people to do these important jobs, we're not just putting them into a position that they're not prepared for. Our Commission on Ministry has developed a whole program by which we are now licensing lay people for ministry. So I think part of my responsibility is to equip people for that as best we can. So I'm talking a lot. You probably want to ask him something.
No, they like it that way. Rather, you would talk. I keep going back to the very first lay folk that I know, and the training that they offered for me, and that was my mother and father. my dad perpetually kind of embarrassed me. Particularly as a kid, I remember, first of all, we had to go to all those services during Holy Week, which was incredible. And then he would wear these galoshes, you know, the ones that would kind of clip in the front, and then you'd put a plastic bag in there and stick your foot in there. You remember that? He used to wear those to usher. And and I thought, why would you do that other than to torture your children? I mean, that's the only thing I could imagine, or to keep me away from church altogether. And my mother, she taught what we called CCD, which was, and we were like 7th graders, and I'm like, why would you do that? I mean, if you had a choice to do that, why would you teach us like on a Wednesday afternoon? Because we don't want to be there. And I just remember feeling kind of really impressed with my mother. And then she used to tell us that she was serving on the altar. And I remember as I got older, I thought, you know, and I learned all the words and everything. I was like, no, Mom, you're serving in the sanctuary. If you were serving on the altar, you'd be standing on top of it, and that would be embarrassing, like Dad's embarrassing. So stop saying you're serving on the altar. But, and then, you know, my father was involved in every kind of church group there was, whether it was men's group or finance or council or whatever it was. And so there was just this whole sense of that part of being church was not just going, but it was giving of yourself. And that's when I learned early on how important lay leadership was. Yeah. They hold it together.
Do you know the first year that women were allowed to be on vestries in the Episcopal Church?
Tell me.
Anybody want to guess? There you go.
I went to a Cubs game.
Melinda got it. Yeah, I tried to find out how long lay people have been involved in the ministry of our church on official boards like vestries. And I couldn't find any documentation for sort of when vestries started.
Yeah.
My hope and my guess is that it's been forever. But women, yes, Melinda got it right. 1971. The first woman who was elected to General Convention was elected in 1946, and she didn't last long. They passed some kind of resolution that talked about how she was really not eligible. So it wasn't until many years later that we had women. But anyway, I digress.
No, I love that because it's great to hear about maybe some of the characteristics or when you think about lay leadership, you think about commitment, you think about devotion to the church, which is something that I think all of us share, but a lot of people think about it through the lens of a clergy person, right? They're committed because they go to work and they do this and that, but look at all of us here and what you do for your church, especially the clergy, the churches that are clergy-free, that have
Clergy-free. Awesome.
I heard that recently. I heard that term recently. That have oh damn.
It's like being pesticide-free.
Sort of like the pandemic. When we got over the pandemic, we were clergy-free.
Yet are quite alive and trying to figure out, you know, how to continue to share the message of hope and of what Jesus teaches us in the scriptures. And now I lost my train of thought, but okay. When we now thinking back about the role of the laity in the church, what does that look like? What does the importance of it? No, how does it change in the future? The importance of lay leadership in the future. We're going to start with you, Bishop Audrey.
Me. So the future, I think we're seeing some of the future right now. You know, the church I grew up in the 50s and the 60s is long gone, right? And I think that what we're experiencing now is sort of a bridge moment between what has been and where we'll be. And certainly in central Pennsylvania, it's around much smaller congregations. and it's around congregations maybe being clergy-free or having quarter-time clergy. I mean, where do you find a quarter-time priest? So that then leads to the need for priests to become circuit riders because they become sacramentalists, basically. And it leaves everything else, the pastoral care, the evangelism, sometimes even the worship planning, stewardship, finances, fundraising, pastoral care, did I say that? It leaves it to the lay people. And so one of the things that we're working on in central Pennsylvania is building a task force that's looking at how do we support clergy-free churches so we can help the administration of congregations and let the lay people do what they're gifted at doing, what they're called to be doing, not just what they have to do because we need somebody to do it. So I'm excited about looking at ideas like sharing a bookkeeper among congregations, doing centralized payroll. I mean, none of this is sexy, but it's getting the work done so that congregations, so that lay people can bring their real gifts, right. Gifts of pastoral care, gifts of teaching, and then maybe they're gifts of administration, but when I was in Connecticut on the bishop's staff, I used to go around with a little checklist. And this was back in the days when we had mostly full-time priests, and a parish, kind of a rogue parish, would decide that they only needed a part-time priest. And so I would show up with a checklist saying, okay, if you're going to have a 20-hour-a-week priest, who's going to do all of the rest of these things? You know, show me how this is going to happen. It was a fairly draconian way of approaching the problem. And now I'm much more excited about seeing how can the diocesan leadership help and support administratively so that lay people can lead with the gifts that they have. So I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah. Bishop Kevin, what would you say?
You know, when I arrived here as bishop, there was clarity in my own mind that there was a need for additional leadership on the diocesan staff, and we had two of our wonderful lay leaders, Paula and Cindy, who were already in place, and the next two individuals that we brought on were Steve and Sandy, and in my mind they. And I'll embarrass both of them all at once, so it'll be easier. But they embody, for me, what lay leadership can be, because they're as committed and as rigorous in their spiritual formation than anybody I know. Whether it's growing in faith, whether they've both been through EFM, they've both been through the Anglican Social Justice Program at EDS. They go to church more than anybody I know.
And they don't get paid for it.
And they don't, yes, exactly.
At least you go to the church part.
And I think I don't need to tell you, I'll add Tim Wagner into that group as well. They almost single-handedly, our lay leaders, create this event. Canons Melinda and Barbara and I, of all the events in the diocese, this is the least in which we offer assistance. So this is a lay-led event by extraordinary lay leaders, which I think speaks also to the commitment in our diocese for lay leadership. I had another quick story, and that was, you know, also when I first arrived here, one of the most urgent needs was, Bishop, we need clergy, we need support, we need folk coming in, and you know, we did. We brought on a number of wonderful new clergy and those who are newly ordained in the last 5 years as well. And I had a priest call me recently, rather new to the diocese. He says, Bishop, nobody calls me to do services. And I said, what? I said, are you on the list? You know, there is a list, right?
There is a list.
Yeah, there's a list. He says, I'm on the list. Nobody calls me. And so I can feel that there's a shifting, whether it was a combination of the events of COVID, or of just the emphasis on lay leadership, that we don't look towards clergy in the same way that we did even 5 years ago. In terms of, whether it's lay worship that's happening in our communities, when a clergy person is away or there's a transition time, there seems to be a shifting to a new way and a new model. And for me, that just speaks of tremendous hope for the future of our churches and for the future of the wider church as well.
Thank you, Bishop Kevin. Bishop Audrey, if we could talk a little bit about the ladies' role in the church of the future, but with a lens focused on our Unification December work.
Reunification and lay leadership. If I were drawing a Venn diagram, which as a third grade teacher I used to do a lot of those, I don't know how big that overlap would be. I think that one of the opportunities that we have in a reunified diocese, should we do that, and even if we don't, is to continue to draw on the wide gifts that we have in each place. I mean, what a privilege it's been for me to sit here today and listen to your workshops and hear about the ministry and the good work that's happening in the Diocese of Bethlehem. And if you came over, if we had such an event as Gather in our place, you might hear some of that, some of the similar novelties of what we're doing, where we don't necessarily have overlap. And what an opportunity that provides for us around learning from each other. And so wouldn't it be cool if we had, you all know what the Episcopal Asset Map is? Mm-hmm. Every food pantry in the world is on there in the Episcopal world. Every overnight shelter, that kind of thing. It's a resource bank. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a resource bank between our two dioceses, or if we combine as one diocese to say, we're doing really good work on creation care in central Pennsylvania, and these are the people who care about it. Well, I just heard two of your ministers here today talking about creation care. We should be talking together. And I think that in each of your congregations, there are people with gifts among your laity who are doing really important gospel work. And what a gift it would be to share that with those of us in central Pennsylvania. I have a young guy that I hope I'll ordain next year who is very excited. He's originally from Mexico, very excited about doing Latinx ministry in central Pennsylvania. That's an area that we have not even thought about. Well, we thought about it. We haven't done anything about it. Now, I know that you have quite a beautifully established program here. So how can we learn from you? I think that's sort of where the Venn diagram comes together for me.
Thank you. Same question to you, Bishop Kevin. What would you add to that about the impact of the lay order in a possibly reunified diocese?
Thank you. I think Bishop Audrey kind of covered most of it. I would add, though, that the Stevenson School for Ministry provides ongoing formation in the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania in a way that really would enhance events like we're doing today. I know, I think at least the former dean, maybe even your current dean, is even here today. And again, the more that we can learn from each other in terms of formation and moving forward. We have an event on Tuesday at the Capitol. It sometimes feels like it's a long distance for those of us in the Diocese of Bethlehem to make our way to Harrisburg. But I learned through Bishop Audrey and her efforts on anti-gun violence, where she basically brought together not just the Episcopal Church leadership, but the leadership across denominations for an event. What was it, in the fall?
November.
November. And here we're gathering again on Tuesday at the State House to bring voices, and anyone who's willing and able to come. That's a ministry that we always here in the Diocese of Bethlehem have just not been able to get our legs in, but we're so committed to it. So we're just grateful for the possibilities. And And I'll quote Sydney and others on the reunification team who continue to remind us in the research that's been done in reunification is there is extraordinary ministry going on in both dioceses. And so your communities, the places where we are truly bringing needed resources to the local community, and you are the heroes in your small towns and hamlets and cities. We want to be able to bring more resources to you and into those communities. And that is one thing that reunification, we believe, if we discern to move that way, can do and can offer, is granting resources and relief in some ways so that the ministry on the ground can be done well and better.
Thank you. You both have shared very good points. And Bishop Audrey, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of closing thoughts. The first, you're laughing because I always have more than one point. I know. Well, you give a bishop a microphone, right? It's a dangerous thing. And the first point just went out of my mind. That's the Holy Spirit is with us. Oh, I know what it was. I had a lay person once, a really gifted lay person in my church said, I of course went up to her and said, you ought to become ordained. You're doing amazing work and you have the gifts of leadership and you know how to gather people, that gift of the priesthood, and you're sending people out into the world, that gift of the diaconate. So have you thought about that? And her response to me was, why would I get ordained and lose all of my freedom? Yeah. Right?
I second that.
Yeah. And that was probably 15 years ago that I asked this woman that question, and she gave me that answer. So that's clearly stuck with me. The other thing I would say is that as much as I consider my position as an ordained person to be the greatest privilege of my life, I also think that there is an amazing impact that lay people can make in evangelism that priests and bishops and deacons cannot make. When you walk up to somebody and tell them how your life has been changed by the gospel of Jesus Christ, nobody's telling you to say that. It's not a profession that you have elected, a byline of your vocation. It is, I don't want to say more genuine, but the impact that you have is outstanding. So thank you for the ways that you do witness to Jesus, the way that you do witness to the church and bring people along.
Thank you. One thought, because we got to move on to questions.
I had two.
One thought.
Yeah, she gets two, you get one.
Gratitude to all of you and all you do. I oftentimes when I come on a visitation, I work really hard to make it as easy as I possibly can for you because I know all that you've done, particularly the meals. I just want to say the meals are extraordinary.
Do you have tater tot casserole in your diocese?
Oh my God. We have that.
If you don't, you should.
The work that you do day in and day out, not only to reach out to your community, but to hold the congregation together. And those of you I know who've served in multiple roles, and sometimes in multiple roles all at the same time. You just need to know how much you're valued and how much we appreciate and give thanks for all you do. And while I'm giving thanks, I just want to say what an honor it is to work with Bishop Audrey.
Thank you.
Who has witnessed and modeled for me and for us the ways in which we can serve in a world that is longing for leadership and longing for hope. So thank you. We're so grateful.
Back at you.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Thank you, bishops. Okay, audience, we have time for a couple of questions. Steve Baker has the mic, and if you have a question, please raise your hand. We will try to see you and go to you. I have no questions.
I have one comment.
Sure.
All right.
Oh, no, do I have to do that?
Yes, so
I just want to say, when you came to Dundas, or Dundas Church, we were probably a nervous wreck, but you made it so easy for us. So it was, you walked in, it was like you were one of us already, and we
Great.
were perfectly at home and comfortable with you, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Good. And when I came to that visit, I left my car running, and it was running outside the church for the entire visitation. And one of your kind gentlemen came up to me and said, "I think your car's
Seriously?
on." And I said, "How about we just keep that to ourselves?"
not anymore. It is
See?
recorded. Any other questions, comments for our bishops? Lay leadership in your parish, communities, the diocese.
Sherry Noctor at St. John's in Palmerton. Just currently, right now, how many churches are in both dioceses?
Great.
60 for us. Somebody might say 62, but we have a couple of yoked situations where we have a summer chapel and a whatever, but 60 to 62.
56-ish? 56-ish.
We have a question over there.
Oh, I was afraid of that.
Brief, please.
So I have a quick question. So when Bishop Kevin came to us, when he started, he gave us Nichols pickles. So if we do happen to reunify or merge or whatever this whole ordeal is coming out to be, what are you offering us? In regards to either pickling or something along those lines?
So I have enjoyed several jars of Nichols pickles. I need to say that right up front, and none can compare. And basically, I'm not as fun as Bishop Nichols, so I bring very little, I guess.
I don't believe that.
No, I have not gifted our diocese with any. Thank you. I haven't gifted our diocese with anything as cool as Nichols pickles. I'll have to work on
Green
that.
Day.
I'll bring Green Day. I'll have to work on that. But great question. And don't tell my diocese that he does such a cool thing.
I think we have time for one or more or two. One more question.
Bishop Audrey, you could always
I have a
invite them
question.
invite them to section hike parts of the Appalachian Trail with you.
That's
Yes,
She's
yes,
a
we did
hiker.
a really fun thing about 6 years ago. We did what we call the Appalachian Camino, where we hiked the Appalachian Trail in our section of the diocese, and we stayed at night. We had the different parishes along the way put us up and feed us, and then we either slept in their parish hall or we pitched our tent in their front yard. I've slept in some of the craziest places in my tent in central Pennsylvania, but that was really fun.
What was your question?
Not important. Over to Bonnie. Bonnie? Funny.
Bonnie, yes.
From both of you, one word to describe your diocese as a personality, and what would happen with those two personalities when they merge.
Oh, wow.
Okay, boys.
One word.
And then we'll combine.
I got my word.
Uh-oh. All right, we'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go
Want me to
ahead.
go? Scrappy. Scrappy.
Okay. Scrappy.
Depends on which side you're on.
Oh. Scrappy and?
scrappy. And the first thing that came to my mind was faithful. But the other thing, I'm going to have more than one answer, Sandy. The other thing, when I came here from Connecticut, it seemed almost Midwestern to me.
Oh.
Because the people were so friendly. I grew up in New England where, you barely talk to your neighbor. And here people are just so friendly. So, friendly and scrappy. I don't know. Would that work?
I think that's close.
You're supposed to tell me what.
So we'll have a faithful, scrappy Midwestern diocese with potential reunification. Thank you, Bishop Kevin and Bishop Audrey. Thank you so much. This was great. So fun to have you both with us and share a little bit about your thoughts on lay leadership. I think it's time to move on to our afternoon sessions and enjoy. I think I'll see some of you later. So thank you both, all of you.